I will argue against this. I think if the players find a loophole, no one to say no. If it's borderline abusive to the game and just kind of ruins the fun of the DM, and I'm not talking about like counterspelling a counterspell. I'm talking about things like using control water to fill up an NPC's lungs and insta-killing them. Yeah, like, no, that's not gonna happen. But I do agree what he's trying to get at, though. What is going on, YouTube? Francis here, and today we have a banger of a video for you today. I make a lot of D&D tips videos on this YouTube channel, but I want to see what other D&D tips videos are there, and let's react to see what kind of advice do people give. All I did right here is I went on YouTube and I typed in D&D tips for new DMs. So we're gonna watch a few of these. The Monkey DM, 5 tips for new DMs.
Now, second rule. It is not to get hung up on the rules. Yes, you're like, but Evan, you literally just told me like a second ago to read the rules and now you're telling me not to listen to them? It's not exactly like this. Look. When you play D&D, there's a ton of rules in that game. Although 5e is a lot simpler than older editions of the game, I'm looking at you 3.5e, it still has a lot of rules. It's got rules for underwater combat, for example. It's got like stuff that barely ever apply to your normal, regular game. And sometimes what's going to happen is a player is going to ask you to do something and you're not sure about the rule. Because of course, you're a new DM. Even like me as a more experienced DM, like sometimes I'm not even sure.
Rip.
A few moments later.
Even me as a more experienced DM, sometimes there's just rules I don't remember. You know, my player asks me something and for the life of me, I cannot remember it. When you're not sure about a rule, just go with your gut feeling. And once the session is over, you go on the internet, take your time and you check the rule. And this way you'll know for next time. So that's why I'm telling you, do not get hung up on the rules. At the end of the day, you're the GM, you're the one who makes the judgment.
Completely agree with that sentiment. It's probably more fun and probably easier to just come up with something that just works. That doesn't need to be an official rule in the book. I have dealt with rule lawyers where I have to like actually pull it up and reference the actual page number from the book. Once that clears up, it doesn't take anything more than a few minutes or so, but definitely agree. Don't do it very often.
Tip number 4. If you are dead new to the game, meaning it's your first time ever playing, you're really not sure about the rules, you're really not confident that you could run a full homebrew world of your own, take a pre-made adventure, you know? I actually wouldn't recommend Frost Maiden as a first adventure. I think it's a bit tough, but you can take Lost Mine of Fendelver is a very good one to get you started and get your DM chops going. Why? Because pre-made adventures have all the ability checks required written down. All the monster, the stat blocks, every encounter, everything is written down, which makes it super easy for a new DM to use because all you have to do is open the book, read the page, and you know what to throw at your players. It's mostly good because players have this amazing talent for derailing any story, so you're always going to end up doing something that was not written on the book. So don't get too hung up on that.
I completely agree. Just running a pre-made adventure is probably my biggest regret. I kind of jumped a few stairs, if you know what I mean, and I literally went from never playing D&D to making my own D&D world, and that is probably the worst mistake I probably would have saved myself a few campaigns just trying to run a pre-made adventure. And also, you might think to yourself, oh, because you know, you're tired of hearing of Lost Mines of Phandelver, or you're worried that your players will just Google the adventure and know what to do. Well, you can always just modify it. And that was probably one thing I would add to his advice. Let's do this. Dungeons and DMs from 5 months ago.
Hey, what's happening, guys? My name is Gabe, and this is going to be a quick video on my 3 tips that will make you a successful DM in your next Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Number 1, that rules are guidelines and they're not the law. Number 2, be flexible, to be invested in your idea but not married to it. And 3, D&D is a collaborative storytelling game, so you want to make your story about your players and their characters. Something that kind of gets some people when they're playing Dungeons & Dragons is that all the little mechanics, the numbers, the dice, all the little types of rules and technicalities. Yeah, you know, the thing is that you could be super duper by the book, which is totally fine in some cases, but if it's at the expense of your players' fun, yeah, that's going to determine the success of your campaign, if people actually want to continue playing it or not. Because, I mean, not gonna say that, hey, you're allowed to fudge the rules and just kind of, I don't know, fudge the dice as a DM, but you are. You're basically the god of that world, and you can do whatever you want. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're fair to your players too, and that they have some sort of understanding of why things are the way they are.
I'm glad he mentioned specifically at the detriment of your players. I play with players that will find loopholes and try to do what they want to do. Yeah, as a DM, you might say, well, if the players find loopholes, I should be rewarding them for their creativity, and I should just allow what they're doing. I will argue against this. I think if the players find a loophole, no one to say no. If it's borderline abusive to the game and just kind of ruins the fun of the DM, and I'm not talking about like counterspelling a counterspell. I'm talking about things like using control water to fill up an NPC's lungs and insta-killing them. Yeah, like, no, that's not gonna happen. But I do agree what he's trying to get at, though.
In order to like have them more invested and more focused and more immersed in your world that you set for them as the DM, you want to go and make your story and your campaign more about the players and their characters more so than your NPCs. At least for me, that's what I figured has the most success, because yeah, people want to have a story, an epic story made about them. That's just it.
Yeah, players care about being adventurers and being protagonists, but if they have nothing about them, then you need to focus on the actual adventure itself and getting your players invested and getting them the care that they don't. You got some work to do.
Other than that, have a fantastic day and enjoy your weekend.
I'm like also like 80%, 90% sure this guy is Filipino. Gabe, if you're watching this, hi, kamusta? 5 tips for new DMs plus bonus tip from Dungeon Masterpiece.
We're told in the Dungeon Master's Guide we should call for skill checks whenever the PCs might do something requiring skill or effort. But this advice is half complete. We should only ask for skill checks if failure would be interesting. If a player is attempting to climb a 10-foot rock wall, they aren't under a time crunch, and aren't being tailed by enemies, just let them climb up the cliff. Older editions of the game have explicit rules for these situations, like taking 10 or even taking 20 to serve as a default dice roll. 5th edition may have eschewed those rules, but there's nothing requiring the DM to call for these checks in the first place. A good litmus test is to ask, if a character fails this dice check, will something dramatic happen as a result? If the answer is no, assume they succeed with the task at hand and move on with the game.
That's true. There's a lot of checks that don't mean anything in D&D. Like, for example, perception. What is the point in failing a perception check? You just don't see anything. But like, you're going to deal with this encounter anyway, so you might as well just see them, regardless of their passive perception.
One of the greatest joys a player experiences is when they guess something about the mysteries of the game world, and their guess turns out to be right. Here's the thing though, you get to control if they guessed correctly. If you're ever lacking on ideas of what to do for an upcoming game session, just throw an unexplainable MacGuffin or two at them and listen to the cross-table chatter. Your players have more brains than you, will be more paranoid than you, and will try their darndest to red yarn and corkboard the unexplainable. This is when you take notes. Why does the Bandit King have a letter in his sock drawer discussing a pickup at the docks? Your players will tell you. Why is there a holy symbol of a defunct church in the Orc Raider's pocket? Your players will tell you. The point is that you don't have to know. Your players will stretch their imagination to draw conclusions about the story, so listening to them will give you great world-building inspiration. So I hope you find these tips.
I think that is true if your party is smart. I think that there is definitely a lot of times when players have a better idea than a dungeon master, which is really good. However, there's a lot of times, and I mean a lot of times, where your players don't have any stories. They'll pick up the cross in the orc tribe's pocket, they'll put it in their inventory, and then they'll forget about it, which is bothersome. I still try to figure out what I need to do to fix that. But yeah, that is the problem.
It's useful.
Here.
And thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters. And until next time, good night.
Oh, is it because his name is Masterpiece? That's why he wears a suit? That's actually hilarious. I like it. I might check out more of those videos. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's any Dungeon Master tips you want me to react to, let me know. Link me down below in the comments section. I hope you have a fantastic day. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out this video over here where I reacted to Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I talk about how it helps Dungeon Masters and if the book is worth getting. So be sure to check that out. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.